Hello! So I've had some of you asking for me to do a tutorial of just a basic watercolor and how I do it. Now there's a lot of ways to do a watercolor painting. There's a lot of different techniques and I can tag some more ideas of tutorials for you to watch. But I just wanted to do something fairly simple that you could really practice with very simple supplies at home. And I know a lot of people, including myself, get started with painting with flowers. And so I have this book that I got at Goodwill that has a lot of different photos of bouquets and different types of flowers. And so sometimes I just come up with things out of my head that I like, but sometimes I want to go off of a real life reference. So I've just picked out one of these bouquets in this book today. It's springy and happy and cheery, some colors that I like to show you how to paint. And I can't guarantee that this is going to turn out like 100% because not every painting that I do does. So if that is encouraging to you, I hope that you are not too hard on yourself with this painting, because watercolor is very temperamental. It is not like acrylic where you can go over it 100 times to make it look exactly how you want. It's not like drawing where you can erase or go over it again. Once it's done, it's kind of done. So it's okay to make mistakes, and sometimes the mistakes turn into really beautiful things. But first I wanted to show you the supplies that I use, and then I will do hopefully a quick tutorial. It'll be real time. It won't be sped up at all. So I really don't know how long this is going to take, but hopefully it's helpful for you and you can see the whole process. Sometimes the sped up ones aren't quite as helpful because you can't tell what they're doing. So I'll do a full length one. And if this goes well and if you guys like it, I will try to post them in the future as well. So first of all, here are my supplies. So I use this brand of watercolors called Prima, and they come in these little trays. I get them on Amazon. They come in trays. They have different palettes. This one is the Currents palette, so it's like ocean and water and green colors, so it's blues and greens basically, but it comes in this nice little tin. I love it because it's portable. I have this other one that I use all the time, that's why it's so dirty, that is called Woodlands. It's just a good variety of shades that I really like, but they have all sorts of different things that that you can choose based on your style. I also use watercolor colored pencils to sketch what I'm doing before I actually paint it. This brand is Artist Loft. I don't know, a friend bought them for me and they work well. It's just the idea is that they disintegrate in water so you don't have hard lines after you finish painting, but you can also use a typical pencil if you want. You just need to be really light with it. And as far as brushes, I don't like to buy expensive brushes, but maybe I should. So I bought this one recently from Hobby Lobby that was a little bit more expensive, and it's a synthetic squirrel's hair. I know it sounds weird. I don't like using real ones. Don't really think that's very nice to the squirrels, but it's a synthetic one. These ones are also synthetic. I think this one's from like a kit that I got at Hobby Lobby of a bunch of different kinds. It's more like a filbert style, if you can see. It's not round. This one's round, and it's a size 6? Yeah, it's a size 6 round, and this one is more like a flat. So different ones can be used for different textures and different sizes. This one's round as well, but a little bit smaller. I have a lot of brushes. It just depends what I'm painting, and honestly, I switch around all the time. I change my mind about which ones I like and don't like, so you can experiment. You don't need expensive brushes. The more expensive they are, the more water and pigment they will hold. But it's not the end of the world if you just have cheap brushes. You can totally make do. I would just recommend having a few different sizes, and I can show you about that in a minute. And then as far as paper, I use this brand called Canson. It's really cheap and it's actually really good quality. I've tried a lot of the different cheap brands because I don't have money for expensive supplies. So I tend to just use those ones. Also, I realized that this video is going to be partially upside down. That is unfortunate. Well, too bad. But yeah, so basically that is what I use. And oh, and then I have my cup of water and I have a paper towel. Okay, so that's about it. I mean, it's pretty simple. I really love that it's really portable. I have a little bag that I put all of this into, just this little thing for water, my little tray, a brush or two and a pencil and some little paper, and it's super portable, so you can even do this sitting outside, going on a hike, wherever you want in your car. But yeah, so I will show you this little bouquet. So I first would start, let's see here. So I have my green pencil here. I am going to start by making just a line with the bottom of the vase and then kind of the top of the vase. Now I'm not going to make the exact proportions because I am not concerned about that. I'm just concerned about showing you kind of the process and the flowers. So if it doesn't look exactly like this, that wasn't the point in the first place. Okay, so basically I'm just going to make rough shapes. So I would put like one big flower there. There looks like another big flower there, kind of one in a different shape up there, another one over there, one kind of hidden in there, and then we've got all these kind of little ones up there, a little one down there, some little ones up there and over there, some little ones in there, taller one there, a taller one there, some taller ones there. Okay, so this is just to kind of show me the scale of what I'm going for, and you'll see I did not sketch in the leaves because what I'm going to do first is paint in the flowers. So this might be opposite. Some people that are really good at watercolor might tell you that I'm doing this wrong, but you'll figure out your own process as you do it. For me, I prefer to start with the more detailed things and then I fill in, or what I want to be the focus, and then I fill in the other less significant parts later. So for me, the main point of this is the flowers. So I'll show you some different ways of doing this. So normally what I would do would be to start with the center of the flower. So for example, this one to me looks like it's mostly yellow in the middle. Same with this one, okay? Same with this one. We'll start with the big ones just to show you. Okay, so I just put a little bit of water on my brush, but not too much, just enough to get this wet and to move it around in the way that I was hoping to move it around. Now I've just got a plain wet brush going around the edges, no paint on it, just to kind of spread it out a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna wipe that off, and I'm gonna go for a sort of pink color. So again, just a little bit of water. Here is my pinkish, but it's actually red on this palette, so you need to put a little bit more water to dilute it down, otherwise it'll be way too dark. Okay, so this is gonna bleed, is what it's called. The colors are gonna blend together a little bit, but I kind of like how that looks, and I'm not doing this for accuracy. It's more just for the blending, and I want it to feel cheery and springy, so I like kind of the fact that the pink and the yellow are gonna mix together, make a little bit of maybe orange. But this is just kind of, I'm just kind of moving the brush strokes in circles here. This one is similar. It's a little bit different color in the photo, but I'm gonna do it in the same sort of color here. And you notice I'm not being 100% accurate. I'm not counting exactly how many petals are on this flower. I'm not concerned about the exact dimensions and such. I'm just trying to get a good amount of pigment. And you can play around with the colors, and if you want it to be darker, just add more pigment. If you want it to be lighter, you add a little bit more water. And if you want to mix a lot, but you don't have space for that in your tray, sometimes I have another tray, or I'll use like, just even like a plate to mix on, or something like a plastic plate or something like that that you can just mix around. And that helps a lot with just getting the exact color that you want. But if you don't want to get into color mixing, I would just use whatever colors are in your palette, just so that you get comfortable with, I missed this one, just get comfortable with the watercolors themselves, and you can always focus on the actual mixing of the colors later on. Okay, so now these ones are yellow in the middle. This one up here is a little bit more pink. That one's a little bit more like beigey. I'm not a huge fan of those colors, so I'm actually gonna go with orange. Switch it up. So just a little bit of orange here. So this one is a different shape, so not all the flowers are straight on, right? So this one's more like, it's kind of folded. So we're just gonna represent that in the angle here. And notice sometimes I'm kind of pulling out on the brush, and sometimes you can go straight down. It really just depends on your own preference of how you feel holding the brush, what kind of brush you have. There's a correct way to hold the brush. I am self-taught. This is what works for me. So this is what I do, and that's totally fine. So, okay. And then there's some yellow ones actually that I saw in here. So there's kind of a yellow Gerber daisy, that's what these are back there. There's one kind of peeking in there. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, what do we have next? So we have some flowers in here that are white, and obviously that is a little bit difficult to represent. So what I'm actually going to do is to show you, I guess, let's see, there's some different ways to do this. Let me start putting in the green, and I'll leave some blank space for those white flowers. So I have some different greens here. I like to keep my color schemes kind of consistent between painting to painting. So these are the greens that I really like to use. I have 3 of them here. If you don't have this palette, obviously you're gonna have different ones. But if you want to keep it consistent throughout the painting, I would normally just start with one, go all the way around with that one, whichever parts I want to use, and then I would mix a new one and go all the way around with that one, and then mix a new one and go all the way around with that one. Because otherwise, if you're doing a little bit of one and then you're mixing and you're doing a little bit of different one, you'll find that all your greens are different and it's going to look a little crazy. So if you want a cohesive color scheme, I would either mix them beforehand to have like 2 or 3 different ones that are going to be consistent, or just go all the way around with one and then another and then another. Okay, try not to go back and forth, it'll get kind of muddy. So I'm using, this is the lightest one that I'm going to start with here, and I want to start with making some stems for the white flowers so that I don't forget to leave some space for them. And they've also got some little leaves on them, so I'm just gonna put in those little leaves there. There's also a stem over here. Okay, there's some little ones up here that I need to remember to leave space for, so I'm gonna put those stems in really quick. Let's see. And then where else do we have? We have these ones up here. Some little ones in there. Okay. Oh, and we have some little ones over here. I almost did not see them. Okay. And I'm just going to add some little leaves to kind of show the continuity of those stems there. Some little fillers up here, because notice we have a lot of white space to fill. And you don't have to fill all the white space. That's also a stylistic choice. But for me, I like to fill as much of the white space as I can, not leave too much open room. Okay. So then I've got my next green. Maybe you have a different one, but this is what I'm using. I'm going to do the stems of the gerbras in this color. So just to show that they're a different variety of flower, I'm doing the greens in a different color here. And notice how they're the colors are blending together a little bit. I don't mind how that looks. If you want to keep them separate, you totally can. But for me, the fun part of watercolor is that sometimes the colors kind of create themselves and you don't expect them to look like they do. You can't really predict them or tell them what to do all the time, but that makes it kind of fun. Okay, so let's see, I'm gonna just put some leaves in here for the gerbras. Okay, some different angles of those, some different amounts of water. Some of them are blending, as you can see. I think that looks pretty good. Let's see, are there any up here? Yeah, let's do one up here. That looks pretty good there. Okay. All right, so now with my third green, I noticed that one was pretty dark. This one is a new one. It's a little bit brighter. I just started using this one. It's kind of fun. So you can see that there's lots of little greens kind of all throughout. And I'm just gonna start filling those in a little bit. Let's see here. I really like how there's some that kind of fall down towards here, so I'm going to represent those. Maybe not with the exact shape, but I just kind of like the idea of the falling down and the water kind of mixing around there. So that one's pretty good there. And then since that's one that I kind of made up, we're going to do one of those up here as well, kind of coming into there. Let's see, do one in there. Make a stem for it so it doesn't just disappear. Okay, blend that in there. Okay, this whole kind of cluster that just kind of falls down here. I really like how that looks. So we're gonna do that. Okay, and that kind of matches on that side. Now this side's looking a little sad, a little bit empty over here, so we're gonna give it just a few on this side. Okay, that looks pretty balanced. Alrighty, okay, so now there's all these little white flowers that we talked about before, and I was thinking about what to do about those. So let's see, let's just make them like this. I have this kind of beige color. It's kind of the color they are in the photo. They're not like bright white, so let's just do that. So let's just do kind of some loose clusters. There's some in there, some in there. And if you ever do something that ends up blending too much or bleeding too much, just like I just did, that I don't really like how that looks, I just take a little bit of the paper towel and I just kind of dab it down until it's back to square one. Okay, when it's still wet, you can wipe it off pretty easily. So that's actually pretty nice. Once you let it dry, it's a little bit difficult, but okay, so we're just gonna make some of those little clumps of little flowers there. All right, okay. I think I regret not putting a little leaf over here, so we're gonna do that really quick. There, that looks more balanced. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we want it to look somewhat balanced from side to side. There we go, that's a little better. Okay, so now those that I just put down, so those are still wet. So they're not super duper wet, they're just like kind of damp, I guess you could say. So something that's kind of fun is when those are drying, I'll show you with one of these other ones first, but while those are drying, I'm gonna get the black here. And I really like having a lot of contrast in my paintings, so I like to actually add some black, and that can be really good in like the middles of flowers. You'll see in the photo that there's not actually black in the Gerberas, but I think it creates a really nice contrast between all of the other colors actually, and that's kind of some artistic license that I'm deciding to take. Okay, so I'm adding a little bit of black in there, and then once these kind of start to dry, I just do like a little tiny bit, and see how it just kind of bleeds out, and it's a little bit unpredictable, and it'll dry lighter than that, but I just kind of like the way that it flows, and with so many light colors, I just like having a little bit more dark in there. You'll see that in how I edit photos on Instagram too. Okay, so let's see here. I know it looks really loose and it doesn't look exactly like the photo. I left out some of these kind of white, don't really know what those are, because I didn't want to make it too detailed. But you get the idea of the blending and the different shapes and just kind of the sketching and mixing some colors, the light and the dark. Let's add a vase, and I sometimes like to create a lot of contrasting color just with hot and cold colors. So all of these flowers are hot colors, orange, red, yellow, right? And some of the greens, like this lighter green, are actually more yellowy. These darker ones are a little bit more blue, but this one's actually pretty yellowy as well. So we've got a lot of hot colors going on there. So I like to do something kind of fun, and I would contrast that with the color of the vase. So I'm just gonna do a more cool colored vase, and notice how I moved my vase over because my bouquet did not end up exactly where I wanted it to be, but that is okay. We just readjusted there. So I don't have very much pigment on my brush right now, I just have a little bit, and then I'm just spreading it around, okay? So I'm just gonna get into all those little cracks there, fix up all those little bits in there. Okay, a little bit in there. It doesn't have to be super dark, but I'll show you something in a minute as well. Okay, there's a little bit more in there. Try not to take forever on this. Okay, so that's kind of in there. There's the shape of our vase, right? If you want it to be a little bit darker, you can just put a lot more pigment on your brush and just start to kind of fill it in, create some shadows. Notice how there's more shadow on that side, so maybe we want to do that a little bit, make a little bit more dimension to it. Okay. All right, so now there's our vase, a little bit more in there, make the shadow. Okay, there we go. And then, so notice how I put these little black dots, but they dried super light, like I said. I'm just gonna go back, and now that it's like almost fully dry, add like a little bit more detail in there, just to make it pop a little bit more. They look more like anemones than daisies, but that is okay. You're not being accurate to the actual photo here. It's just inspiration. Okay, so there's that. There's a little bit more in there. Okay, cool. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think the photo is a lot more like wide left and right. So maybe I didn't represent that quite as well, but the flowers are there, the composition is there. We played with some different colors, different bleeding, and I think that should give you a pretty good idea just watching with the brush and all the different things. I did the whole thing just with this brush because I just wanted it to be loose. Now, if I wanted it to be really, really detailed, I would have switched between brushes. I would have gone a lot slower, mixed my colors more specifically, things like that. But the main part about watercolor is I was doing a wet on dry technique, so you'll notice that I never put water on the paper. You totally can. That's kind of what happened here when it's wet and you add more pigment and it spreads. I did a wet on dry technique, so I kept the paper dry. Just put a little bit of water on the brush, a little bit depending on what I was doing, but that's the best thing to do to start out, I think, is to practice your control over the paints and over the brush, is just use a little bit of water. You don't need a lot. If you get too much, it gets crazy. Like notice there's some puddles in here. That's not what we want. We want it to just kind of dry nice and evenly and spread evenly and not go crazy like this one. Okay, so those are just some basic ideas. And then of course at the end you always want to sign your painting. So there's my name. That is very important, and I like to put a date on it so that I remember when I made it, just in case, because sometimes it's cool to look back and see your progress over a couple of years. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful, and I can try to post more videos if you guys really enjoy this, but that's just what I would do. That was, I don't know, maybe like a 10-minute sketch. You could take a lot more time on it if you wanted to, but yeah, thank you for watching. I hope that that was helpful, and I really appreciate it. Yeah, have fun painting, guys.